Cursed City is on the horizon and the last of the heroes is revealed. So I decided to make a painting tutorial on that last hero, Morrvahl Olbrecht. Also because I couldn't find any tutorial on the internet so far. And I'm kinda excited for this game. And I've already taken seat in the first wagon of the hype train. Anyway, in this video I got some little problems with the focus of my camera, so please excuse me for that. Morrvahl is a battle mage which you can get from an old Warhammer fantasy box called Arcane Mystic Battle Wizards. And it's actually a pretty old model, but it's still pretty good and I had a lot of fun painting it. My name is Eric and you're watching Brush Hammer Dice. So I've already assembled the model here and left the head off. I highly recommend this in that case because it has a long fancy beard that covers some of the chest, so put that on at last. And I spray primed it with Chaos Black from Citadel. And I sprayed it from above with a white can, just sprayed a little bit over there so that you can see the finer details. So we start with the purple robe inside there. For this I use a mix of Screamer Pink from Citadel and from Vallejo Dark Prussian Blue. Actually, you could use any kind of purple, dark purple you got at home. 3 parts Screamer Pink and 1 part of the blue. So you don't have to be that careful, because if you get on some other parts like I did here, it's not a big problem because we're gonna clean up that later on. So on the outside of the robe. Then for the hourglass we're using Dark Prussian Blue again, or you can use you could also use the equivalent from Games Workshop, what would be Cantor Blue. Only in the inside where the glass should be. And once we're done with that, we're using Citadel Blood Belcher for the rest of the hourglass, or for the top on the bottom, and for the blade up there. Using a smaller size brush, put it around there. Also on the blade. And on the chest plate. Once we're done with the silver, we're going to put a shade over it. I'm using Citadel's Nun Oil for that. And I'm always using cheap synthetic brushes for that. Just put a little bit on your brush and just shade it. Of course, we're also going to shade the purple robe. Even a little more darker finish to that, because this guy is is a dark magician or some kind of necromancer, and he needs a dark robe. That's for sure. We're waiting till the shade is dry before we begin with the highlights in there, but in the meantime we're going to paint the staff in a dark brown. In this case I'm using dried bark from Citadel. Just put it on the staff. We're going to shade those later on as well, so don't be worried if it's a little bit too bright for you. In the meantime, the Nun oil on the rope should be dry, and then we're starting to edge highlight some spots. Actually, you don't have to highlight every angle or every edge you can see on the model. In my opinion, it's enough if you just use some spots. For example, here on the outside. Just take the edge of the brush catch those lines. So when we're done with that, we're going to paint the gold details on the rope. I'm using Retributor armor from Citadel. Here you need to be very careful that you don't ruin your paint job you've done before. For the tendrils and the thorns, I use a mix from that Prussian blue or Cantor blue from Games Workshop with Warhammer glow from Citadel, a mix from 2 parts of this green and 1 part of this blue. You probably need 2 parts of that, 2 thin coats of that stuff. So once we're done with the tendrils, it's time for the roses. For the roses I will take the same base color as for the ropes, that purple we mixed earlier on, but we're going to highlight those roses later on with a much brighter color, so that there will be a difference to the ropes, so don't worry about that. So once we're done with that, it already looks pretty cool, but of course we'll need shade, and of course we will need some highlights. But first to the shade, Nun oil again. And also over the brown staff, over the thorns and the staff here. Don't worry too much if you hit. If you hit the arm and the hand, we're going to paint that over later on. And I almost forgot, there are some 2 thin ropes here on the staff. We're going to paint those with Sundry Dust from Citadel, one of my favorite colors. While we wait for the shade to dry, we're starting with the cape. For that I'm using a very dark gray. And so I mixed some black with some gray tone. You can use any gray tone you like. In this case I'm using neutral gray from Vallejo and Negro black from Vallejo as well. For that I'm mixing 2 parts gray and 1 part black. The reason for this color that we don't use, or for the cape that we don't use a normal black, is black you can't wash to build up recesses. If you start with a black coat you can't go any darker, and if you start with a dark gray tone you can go darker and you can go brighter, of course. So we are going to paint with this gray all of the cape and the straps in the front. And of course also with that dark gray tone we'll put that on the head as well. The next step is totally optional. Here we're going to put a little bit more effect on the hourglass. As I said, it's totally optional, you don't have to do that. I like to do it. So for this I'm using some white and mix that with the Prussian blue we used before. And now we're going to layer it a little bit more to higher points. So for that I'm mixing in a little bit white with the blue. And we're going from dark to light. Only about 3/3 of the glass. So when you've done that, we go one step lighter. Don't have to wait till it's dry. Now we're going to paint it a little bit lighter from here to here. It takes a little bit of time, but the result is pretty decent for that. We're going brighter on the bottom line of that glass. And on the bottom of the top part from the glass. A little bit more white in some spots. It looks like that. It looks a little bit like reflections from the glass. So you see that? Later on we put on some gloss varnish and it will look even better. Now we're going to lighten up the cape with that dark gray we used before the wash. Just put a little bit on your dry brush. I'm using Army Painter Masterclass for that. It's actually a pretty good one, but every old brush or makeup brush will do as well. And then we just go over the whole cape very lightly. circular motion. And also over that straps. You probably won't see that much in the first dry brush coat, but we're going to be lighter anyway. So then we're going a little bit lighter with that. We mix in some white into the color we're dry brushing. Not too much color on the brush, so I'm going to wipe it off. Now you see the whole cape becomes lighter. This time only brush from above, so from up to down. Same on the head. But of course, the part here we won't dry brush because the light shines from above and under there should be a little bit darker to simulate a little bit more shadow. We can also dry brush a little bit here in front. His long beard. Very cool, huh? Guys, kind of freaky a little bit, but actually I like that figure a lot. It's an old one, but it's still cool. So, and now we're going lighter again, so a little bit more white into there. For the edge highlight of the cape, I'm going to use heavy blue gray from Vallejo, but any brighter gray tone will do the job as well. But I'm only dipping here on the highest edges, like on the back of the hood. There, here on the arm. Of course you can skip this step, this is very optional. You don't need to highlight everything as well, but some sharp corners and raised edges, if you highlight that, it will give it will pop way more on the battlefield or on the playfield on Cursed City. Man, I'm very hyped for this game and I hope it will come out very, very soon, because I will be all in for that. The stuff and the information they released so far, awesome, really, really awesome. Except for the zombies with the gravestones on their back. Oh man, I think, nah, not my taste, not my taste. But the other zombies, they recently announced for the new Vampire AOS army, they look actually pretty cool, so I can't understand why they didn't put them into the Cursed City box. After it is done, it looks something like this. On the sharper corners, on the edges, you can mix in also a little bit with white, like those parts or the tip of the rope's edge, for example. For the next part, we are going to highlight the roses, and for that we will mix Screamer Pink with a little bit of white to brighten that a little bit up. Then we're only setting a few small highlights on those roses. You don't have to edge highlight the whole rose, that would be a lot of work. Just some raised corners. After the roses are highlighted, we're going to continue with edge highlighting. In this case, we're going to edge highlight the tendrils. For that, we're using the same green as before, Warpstone Glow, in mixture with a dark Prussian blue, and we're mixing a little bit of white. And then we highlight the edges. Now on to the skin and the skull. On there we're going to use Record Flesh from Citadel. There and there. And also on the face, and don't forget the ears. Once the Record Flesh is applied, we continue over the skin parts, not over the skull, with a contrast paint Gulliman Flesh. If you don't have Gulliman Flesh contrast, you can use any kind of flesh wash you have at home. So now all over the skin. Be careful that you don't put there too much. After that, we're using a brown shade. In that case, Agrax Earthshade from Citadel. In my opinion, the best brown wash. And then we go over the skull. And also over that two little ropes painted earlier with sundry dust. The next step, we're going to highlight the blade with Citadel Ironbreaker. That's pretty good space for highlighting. And for the sharpest corners of the blade or sharpest edges of the blade, we use Boonfang Steel. So that everyone knows, looks at the weapon, this is the sharpest point. Ouch! We're going to highlight the skin tones now with flayed bone flesh. We're starting here at this hand. For example, there we put some paint on the knuckles of the hand. Here and there on the finger. For the edge highlight of the skull, we will use Rathbone from Citadel. That's the face highlighted. I only highlighted the cheek, the ears, and the nose. That's far enough. And here the knuckles and the fingertips. And a little bit on that finger over there too. Take a little bit of Rathbone. And then we're only going to highlight some details of the skull. Around the eyes and the nose. For the eyes of our battle mage, we will use Pallid Witch Flesh from Citadel. I won't make eye dots in it because no. Sometimes it looks stupid, so I don't do that. Now the next step is totally optional as well. You take your white, whatever white you use, and then we start writing with that fancy runes on that mage. Very optional. I actually don't recommend that if you wanna finish this project fast, but totally doable. Just think of some fancy runes, create some of them yourself, but I would recommend trying it out on some piece of paper, because it could be a little bit tricky if you haven't wrote something with a brush and acrylic paint on such a small thing. It actually doesn't look that good on it. Not yet, at least. Once we're done with that step, actually turned out pretty cool, and it actually does a lot of fun, but it's totally optional and up to you if you want to do that step. After we're done with that, as we are coming closer to the end of this tutorial, we're doing some of the last highlights. Here in the middle of the breastplate, this I highlighted with Iron Hand Steel. Oh no, sorry, Runefang Steel. And then over that I'm putting contrast Akelan Green, just a little bit. To put some eye catcher on it. Then for the amulet on the middle of the chest plate, the outer rim we paint in Retributor Armor again. Be careful here that you don't mess it up. And boom! finally done. Or nearly. Now we can let it dry and then glue on the head. Now for the final step, for the hourglass, I'm using some gloss varnish. Any gloss varnish will do. The job, I'm using Vallejo's here. Mix that with a little bit of water, not too much. And then you just put it over the glass from the hourglass. And what that will do, it will let it look more like real glass. But only on the glass parts. Don't do it over the roses, for example. That will look shit. And we are done. Actually, I'm pretty happy with the result, and I'm looking forward to Cursed City. There will be more painting tutorials for Cursed City models in the future on this channel, especially for those models Warhammer TV won't do a tutorial for. So if you like, subscribe, leave me a like, and put in the comments which of the Cursed City models you want to see next in a painting tutorial from me. So have a good time, have a good start with Cursed City, and take care. Bye bye.